Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like Batman, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as Windex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey, truth of the matter.
All right, all right. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Truth of the Matter. I am your host, Dexter Peggins Jr. And no, you are not seeing double. I got the OG on tonight, my dad. But listen, before I introduce one half of the dynamic duo that brought me into the world, just want to say first and foremost, thank you all once again for joining us on the show. This is the fourth episode. And so if you've been following us from the beginning, you know that over these last couple of weeks, we have been endeavoring to talk along the subject line of preparedness to some degree. You know, our very first episode, we were discussing the mental and the spiritual side of preparing. You know, a lot of us are taking on a lot of stuff that is leaving us unbalanced, delusional, and one of the worst places you can find yourself is forced to make decisions when you're not in the right state of mind. And so after that, the following week, we talked about from disease to wellness, where we were talking about some practical things that we can do to put into place to make sure that we're healthy. You know, let's face it, you know, with what we see on the national level with this pandemic and other things, we have to take better opportunity, better advantage of these windows of time to focus on our health. And so we had an expert speaking on that. And then last week, we discussed something that I like to talk about, which is money and real estate with my guy David Avery, and there's a number of opportunities that are out here right now, and so it's my hope that you know, we're taking advantage of these opportunities and these opportunities to come. A lot of times in times of downturn, economic downturns, you know, if we're not careful, we'll overlook these opportunities that we can be taking advantage of. And one of the things is that if we prepare ourselves for in the now, we'll be ready to deal with those issues and those opportunities when they come up. But nevertheless, with this being National Preparedness Month, I knew that. I would be wrong if I brought on none other than the expert himself, the man that I have the privilege of taking the same name after. One of the things about my dad, my wife is always laughing at me when we get together because we're talking along the lines of what we're going to be discussing tonight, and and it's a necessary subject. You know, I think it's something that's quite commonly overlooked. But I hope that after tonight's discussion, that it'll be something that we all consider. And not only will you consider it, but you will be willing to start putting some things into place. So, with no further ado, let me introduce none other than Dexter Peggins Sr. Dad, why don't you come on, introduce yourself to the audience, and tell us a little something about yourself.
All right, all right. Like my son just said, my name is Dexter Pagan Sr., that is. Just a little bit briefly about myself. Past life, 25-year military veteran, which 2 years of that was spent in the Marine Corps, and the other 23 years spent in the Army as a combat medic. Once I retired from I'm retired military. Continued on in my professional career working at the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, in the areas of emergency management and also emergency response. Retired from there a couple of years ago. And currently I'm working as a contract instructor with Department of Homeland Security at the Center for Domestic Preparedness training in the areas of healthcare, emergency management in the areas of healthcare and healthcare leadership and things associated with healthcare facilities. And that's just a little bit about myself.
I poke and prod, get into a lot more. Do I have any disturbance? Can you hear me pretty well?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Hmm.
Okay. Well, hey, my first question that I want to ask you is, especially as we get ready to really dive into this subject, if you heard the term practical preparation or practical preparedness, how would you answer that? What do you think? What does that mean to you when you hear that?
Um, to me, I would define practical preparedness or practical prepper. Practical meaning something that's you really not going overboard with. It's kind of like not a knee jerk reaction. Something that you just doing out of hysteria or whatever. Preparedness is basically preparing yourself for what could possibly take place. And so when if someone was to say further define a practical prepper, I would say someone who's preparing, for the unknown, emergencies, events that may take place, trying to prepare themselves as much as possible to be better equipped and ready to either survive whatever it is or best handle and respond to whatever it is.
You know, as you said that, I think for the most part, the term prepper was, there's a negative connotation of it. In a lot of circles, a lot of people think that they're crazy. They live on the outskirts and stuff like that. But if you think about it, preparedness has been around since the beginning
Hmm.
of time. And so let me ask you this: why do you believe people don't really think along these lines as it relates to prepping and being ready for any given scenario?
Well, I think a lot of folks don't take the time, don't take it serious as far they want a couple of different reasons. One, they may not have what I call a preparedness mindset. Maybe they're pretty much used to the ideal that if something happens, there will be someone coming there to assist them or to help them, and also they have not experienced a event in which they pretty much had to be self-reliant or self-sustaining on their own. So unless they've actually went through a real world event which they found themselves basically on their own for a period of time, having to be resilient, having to exercise their resiliency uh, on their own, or basically they just haven't prepared, just haven't had a situation that the help wasn't there. Something happened, maybe within a day or two everything was back to normal. So if that's what you've experienced, it's probably kind of hard to really totally grasp the ideal of why it's important that you yourself become per se slang prepper or being prepared to survive and sustain on your own for any type of event that may take place. I mean, that's just a reality. The world we live in now, with so much going on, if something happens where it's happening simultaneously across the country or in your area, you probably will find yourself on your own for a while. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's simply a matter of they haven't experienced that, so it's kind of hard to grasp the concept.
Well, let me ask you this because and you and I, like I said, we discussed this on a number of occasions, and I remember that when this whole COVID thing really took place. I was sharing with you how I took your grandsons. We were all at the grocery store, and I went there just to show them, I wanted them to see the shelves, how empty they were.
Hmm.
They have a tendency of telling me what they don't want to eat and stuff like that. So, I
Right.
let them know that, hey, listen, this is a very real reality. You don't have the option of saying what you will and won't eat. But besides that, what are some examples, that maybe people might be overlooking that can really serve as a disruptor to everyday life that will cause us to really realize that we need to adopt a preparing or preparedness mindset?
Well, what we just experienced in the early part of the year as a result of the COVID pandemic, which really is still ongoing. It's not like it's over with, but basically what we experienced was what we call a lot of panic shopping.
Mm,
Panic shopping. So based on the panic shopping, basically what that was, people where things were starting to shut down. There was a lot of different control measures and limitations being put in place. So people felt that in the event they might find themselves being locked down or required to stay at home or whatever for an extended period of time, they wanted to make sure they would have food and what have you. So basically, as a result of that, we end up having what we call a self-inflicted food shortage.
mm,
People would go into the store, they would buy as much as they could, and then next thing you know, the shelves are bare. And the way the economy operates now is supply and demand. Cold supply chain, and basically, like every so many days, they bring food in. So if every so many days when the food comes in, everybody goes in there and buys it out, it makes it feel like there's a food shortage when in reality there's a food hoarding and not
mm.
necessarily a shortage. And so, with that said, we have seen the same thing uh, as it relates to food, which also, unfortunately, we're seeing the same thing as it relates to firearms and ammunition, because another part of what's going on in our country right now is a fear leading up to the election, and as a result of the election results, increased civil unrest, adding to the ongoing protests and civil unrest is going on right now. So there's a fear in that we may find ourselves having to deal with a lot of unrest, and if law enforcement or whatever is not available to respond, then you may have to become your own first responder. So just like food shortage, right now there is a shortage when it comes to firearms ammunition. Uh, Continued unemployment, lack of funds, all those things will they kind of direct towards being prepared. Because if you say, for example, on the financial side, not planning for emergencies, like that rainy day events, now we have discontinued unemployment. People have no access to money.
Yeah.
Money is what buys food and everything else. So that too creates a shortage. So it's just a lot of different things happening all at one time. And unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
That's even what you said that, I was thinking along the lines of, Hurricane Katrina's, and major natural catastrophes, not
Hmm.
just, things like pandemics, but literally the systems and the infrastructures that are placed when they get disrupted. We never really factor in those second and third level effects, how they hit us.
Oh
At the
yeah.
end of the day, we all know that Walmart is going to be there, Kroger's and Sam's or whatever. But as you mentioned earlier, oftentimes none of us can really trace to an event that has really uh, changed our day-to-day life. And so, I like how you mentioned that. Um, there's been fear. Fear has served as its own type of disruptor right now, where the attitudes of people have essentially been creating a climate socially that we need to start considering as well. Just as we take into account, the natural disasters, can we read the tone and the census or the climate of our society? And if we can do that, we can start to see that there's certain behaviors that are going on right now that we need to give attention to, and that it can inform some of our decisions. And so, I mean, with that being said, let me ask you this: if someone is new to the concept of preparing, for the most part, every time they go to the store, they just grab a bag of chips and a soda. What would you suggest for the novice prepper or somebody who's new to this terminology?
So, there's a couple things, and I kind of describe it like this. First step, as far as being new to it and trying to prepare, the first step is mindset. You have to have the right mindset. And that is the mindset needs to be no matter how bad things get, you and the people you care about are going to survive. So that your mindset is going to drive a lot of what you do as far as preparedness and preparation. So with the proper mindset, starting off with the proper mindset. Second thing would be making sure fitness wise, that you're healthy, you're fit. If you're already weak, out of shape, poor conditioning, that's just going to make your survival or your family member survival a little bit harder. And then, of course, you want to address the basic stuff. Your food. I mean, your water, food, shelter, means to communication, and securities. Those are just maybe 5 areas, out of a whole laundry list of different things. But those are your basic things. Your water. 3 days without water, you're going to dehydrate. Your body starts to shut down. Food, you can on average, probably 30 days, 3 weeks to 30 days before you start, seeing effects of starvation. Shelter, of course, shelter to me would come after water. You need to be protected from the elements, be it hot or cold. And communications, being able to know what's going on in and around you outside of your immediate environment. And also security, when folks hungry, if you got it, I'm coming to get it. So you need to be able to protect yourself and your family and the people you care about. So those would be like, to me, some of the basic building blocks. But once again, it starts with mindset.
Gotcha. Hey, Dad, we're gonna pause for the calls, and then after
Okay.
we come back, I got some good questions for you. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Okay.
Everybody out there, give us a few seconds. We'll be right back.
There is a prevailing crisis that has crippled families and communities for decades. This crisis has a direct association to higher crime rates, increased poverty, and cost the nation millions of dollars annually. The crisis is the epidemic of fatherlessness. What would the world look like if fathers were not only physically present, but emotionally available as well? What would the conversation between the repentant father and the dejected son sound like? Recognizing that sons, both young and old, need to hear a heart of a father serves as the motivation for this literary work. This book is for those who need wisdom and guidance, never had those necessary moments with their father, or wish they had more moments with their father. Through the affirmation of a father's love, this book will traverse the difficult path from disappointment to hope, and from alienation to reconciliation.
Hey, listen, Dad, I'm trying to be official like a referee. Listen, boy got a commercial and everything. But listen, no, hey, thank you all for coming back. I'm honored to have my father on the show tonight. He's a man of many hats, and very knowledgeable in the subject matter which we're talking about on tonight. And so let me ask you this, Dad, because you were hitting on something as it relates to the prepper's mindset. And some you also hit a few practical things that we can put into place as far as it relates to this topic. If you remember that show, it was the Preppers. I can't remember the title of it, but where it had the people, they once again they were living off the grid, in the middle of the woods and stuff. And I think the term bugging out really derived from that whole that movement or that show. And
Okay.
I want to ask you this: as far as preparedness, is it unique to the environment? Is it something that if I live in a rural society versus a urban environment, am I preparing differently?
Oh yeah, for sure. Whenever I have this kind of discussion, I always break it down or discuss the difference between the two. You have to be realistic based on and prepare based on the environment in which you live in, or that you would plan to relocate. Say, for example, per se, if you had to bug out, that term means basically you're leaving you're leaving pretty much your home or place of safety, relocating to another area because primarily because of that place of safety is no longer safe for you to stay there. Bugging out should be your last resort. That should be like your last option. And that is because most of your resources are probably going to be in that home or in that place that you're leaving. When you bug out, you're going to only be able to take so much. So when you're talking about preparedness, I look at it like urban environment, a city environment, and also the rural and the country environment. If you live in a city, the challenges are going to be a whole lot different than if you live in a country or urban rural environment. An example, in the city, your means of transportation, you have to look at how do you get around. A lot of folks, they use public transportation. So if your source of transportation is buses or subways, now you're saying that I need to leave this area. How are you leaving? Are you walking out? Where are you going? If you don't already have an area that's been pre-designated, identified, you have stuff already stored there that will help facilitate your survival once you arrive there. Realistically, bugging out, going to a rural environment, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Folks living in the country in a rural environment, a lot of them are more self-sufficient than people living in the city, and that is because they have farmland. A lot of them do, where they're able to grow their own food. They might have a well dug on their property where they're able to get their own water. They have livestock like pigs, cows, where they can butcher their own meat. So they're more, I think, preparedness in a rural environment is more advantageous because most folks who grow up in that environment, they have some survival skills. It's just really part of growing up, where city dwellers, that's what they call you. If you can't get to the store, if you get to the store and food gone, whatever you got, that's it. So it's definitely a difference between the two. Yes.
Well, with that being said, so for the person who lives in the city, you just mentioned, the buzz scenario, which was if they go to the store and there's no food, pretty much, you're in a bad way. So,
Mm-hmm.
would you suggest, any type of preparation or, what would you do right now? Well, if it seems like everything is good, there's no issues, the harvest is plenteous at the store. Would you give some advice right now for a person who's hearing you and maybe wants to put something in place starting today?
Okay, probably the most important advice I would give anybody starting right now, uh, no matter where you are in your preparedness program. One, it starts with you. Okay, second is family. Third is community. And part of that community is networking with other communities. And what I mean by that is you won't be able to survive, you're not going to be able to survive the storm alone. Then that term, that saying there's strength in numbers, that's very true. So the best thing I could say is you need to start with your family, you and your family first, because that's the basic building block. And then you need to become part of either a group, be it survival group, part of your community of like-minded folks. They need to be like-minded. That's very important, where you can all come together during that storm. And when I say the storm is any type of emergency event, I just use the term storm because we know storm normally brings destruction, where you can come together and pool your resources together to work as a team or a group towards everyone's survival. I mean, that's critical. That group can be made up of family members and close friends. It can be made up of members within the community or even people outside the community, but you have ability to come together during that emergency. So that is very important. That needs to be happening right now. You definitely need to be doing that right now.
And I know that we're kind of coming close to the end of the show, but I would be amiss without your expertise to not ask you, any medical related questions. So as it relates to medical preparedness and readiness, do you mind talking about some of the stuff that you do? I know that you do a lot of stuff as far as training. How's that applicable? How's it practical to the everyday person?
Okay, well, yes, I do. I mean, the medical stuff is really a carryover from the military. It's a passion of mine. Like I said during my introduction, I spent 23 years in the Army as a combat medic. And I know, and I have a company right now. It's called Still Standing LLC, and basically it specializes in providing like what we call stop the bleed training, CPR, AED, and also tactical emergency casualty care, combat casualty care, tactical emergency casualty care training. So basically, the bottom line is this: during an emergency, there's a good chance if you get hurt or you get sick, you may be your own healthcare provider, because if if there's civil unrest or there's destruction, where we just had a like Hurricane Laura that just went through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and all the destruction down there, and also in Houston. I mean, your normal day-to-day operations have been hampered, and they may not be up and running for an extended period of time. So if you have an emergency in which you need some kind of medical care, you may not be able to get that care like you normally would. And when we talk about emergency medical care, time is critical. So part of your preparedness planning and program definitely needs to include medical training and also acquiring medical equipment, not just your typical kits for treatment, like first aid kits for scratches, bruises, bumps, and stuff like that. But you also need kits and equipment that will address what we call trauma, like injuries from like they cause serious bleeding and stuff like that. How to control and stop that bleeding until you can get further help. Those areas need to be addressed.
So, because listen, y'all, my dad trained the whole family on how to had us all in there with tourniquets on and everything. So
That's right.
It's the real deal. But one of the things I appreciate is that even going to the range, we're both gun advocates and stuff like that. But if you carry a weapon, you should also be of the mindset that you need to be able to provide some type of emergency assistance as well, because that the two go hand in hand. I mean, that's just the reality of the matter. And so, Dad, I got your Instagram account on, but I want to give you the opportunity to maybe talk about some of the services that you provide, and also if the people want to contact you, how can they go about doing that?
Okay. Once again, my company is Still Standing LLC. You can follow me, and I ask, definitely follow me. Follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @still.standing. It's a couple names similar to mine, so you'll see mine. It'll say Doc, and that's me. Doc is just a carryover from the military. In the military, they call all their medics Doc. So I'm not a doctor, but for those guys out there on the field, I was their doctor. But anyway, we provide first aid, CPR, AED training, which is like your basic first aid, CPR, and AED training. We also provide stop the bleed training, which we get more into treating trauma. How to stop like serious bleedings from penetrating wounds, gunshot, stab, anything that's going to possibly nick a major artery or something like that. And also we provide what we call tactical emergency casualty care training. And one other area we provide training in, that's in urban preparedness and survival, which is related to what we're talking about right now. Just some good solid training on things that you should be doing right now if you're not already doing it, to enhance your emergency preparedness program for you and your family and the people that you care about.
Hey, listen, once again, that was the OG. My dad, Dexter Senior, aka Doc. I want to say thank you for coming on and providing those jewels of wisdom. The reality you all is that preparation is key. And as men of faith, I do not find there to be any inconsistency with preparation in faith. In fact, it's my firm belief that the Bible is probably the greatest book of preparation. It prepares us to live, it prepares us to reign, and it prepares us to transition. So with that being said, you all, this has been Truth of the Matter. I want to say thank you all for joining us. And until next week, the next time we get back together, I bid you peace, Godspeed, and we out.
Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like Batman, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as Windex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters.